Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee. There are no apologies to record, and everybody that is expected is here, so welcome to you all. First, agenda item, declarations of interest. Are there any? So there are no extra declarations of interest to record, which means you can go straight on to item 2, exclusion of the press and public. And this is just the Annex A to agenda item 8 contains information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons, so that when we get to that agenda item 8, we'll drop into private session at the time. Is that agreed? I can see everybody agreeing. Thank you very much. Item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. So these are set out between pages 1 to 4. Any issues anybody would like to raise from the minutes? If not, I shall sign those in a minute as a correct record. Thank you very much. Item 4 is public participation. As far as I'm aware, we have no registered public speakers tonight, which means we can go straight on to agenda item 5. So changes to membership of committees, and this is set out on pages 5 to 8. Robert, anything you want to mention to us?
No, so it's a standard report in which the SACRA committee are going to have a replacement, and the committee is being asked to appoint Joseph Heppelstone to replace Kirsty Woodsworth as a committee B member and representing the Church of England.
Thank you very much. I can see nods from colleagues, but are we all happy with that change? So thank you very much. Which then moves us on to agenda item 6, so the workforce profile, which is set out on pages 9 to 20 for us. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. You will recall that we presented you with the Q2 estimate, which took us up to December last month. So we're actually presenting to you the workforce profile at Q4, but this is an estimated, because we haven't quite got all of the details. But given the fact that this is the last committee of the cycle, we have provided you with some estimates, and we don't expect that there will be a great deal of variation. You will also see there wasn't a great deal of variation from last month either, but obviously we've looked at the 2 year-end positions for you. You can see that the year-end position in terms of headcount and FTE have slightly increased, mainly due to agency staff joining, which is actually a benefit because we're not paying as high fees in terms of our agency staff, and they are decreasing in terms of the costs, etc. And the number of leavers is also decreased slightly. Resignations remains to be our highest absence reason, followed by retirement. Our retirement numbers are slightly lower than they were in the previous year, but resignations are pretty much in line with regional and national figures. People are still looking at new opportunities across the board. Similarly, we are also getting people who are interested in City of York Council from much further afield in terms of our hybrid posts that are available to us. Work with York assignments, as I've just said there, they have continued to be used, and they are a beneficial way of actually employing temporary workforce. However, you will see that our position of those have now been significantly decreased in terms of cost and in numbers than the same period last year. There does remain to be vacancies that are unfulfilled, and again, this is very reflective across the up and down the country, to be honest, and a lot of councils are struggling, as well as public sector, to fill vacancies. It's an applicant market at the moment. Moving on to sickness absence, we have predicted lower outturns in Q1 and Q2, but we're still slightly higher than previous years. Similarly with our neighbours in Yorkshire and Humber, and I've also had a discussion with some colleagues in the North East, and they are very, very similar as well. But again, that caveat, as I've said in previous meetings, we don't all record absence in exactly the same way, so it is very difficult to compare on a like-for-like basis. We are still seeing COVID sickness absence cases. I reported in December were quite high. They're not as high as they were in December. However, we're still seeing numbers, but they are relatively low, hoping that that will ebb over the next couple of months, as it did last year as well. Stress and musculoskeletal and infections are our highest reasons for sickness absence, and you can see from the trend map there that we've got at paragraph 10 for information as well. Obviously, managers do continue to manage sickness absence, and HR support them to do that. And obviously the role of self-care is really important, and we continue to make sure that employees are aware of health and wellbeing opportunities available to them, as well as the employee assistance programme. In terms of equalities profiling, this pretty much remains the same as we reported last month. And we'll continue to make sure that our employees, although it's not mandatory, to try and update their status available so we can compare and contrast with our local community. I've got nothing further to update, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions on any of the performance indicators or any of the details anyone wants to speak about.
Thank you very much. Ian, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing else, Charlie. I think Helen's covered it all there.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just looking at the equalities reporting, and we've got numbers for ethnicity and disability of York and CYC from 2019-20 through to 22-23, and the levels of people from different ethnicities and also with disability in the council have stayed fairly static, as have the numbers within the city itself. But we're not reflecting our society within our workforce. And so I feel as though we should be making greater strides towards equaling those numbers. And I'm just wondering how regularly this is reviewed and what the process is, and what's going on to try and make sure we're advertising and trying to recruit as broad a range of people as possible. Thanks.
Absolutely. What are we doing? I'll go on to that part first of all. We're doing an awful lot of recruitment fairs, and if you've actually seen our posts on Facebook pages, etc., we are doing an awful lot of recruitment at recruitment fairs and going out to a lot of hard to reach areas. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that we're not recruiting people from all of these different backgrounds. And again, it's a promotion aspect and something that we really need to look at in terms of encouraging people to define their protected characteristics. So I know there's individuals that have put not specified because it isn't mandatory. So we need to do a piece on that rather than saying we're not representative, because we may well be more representative than these figures are. So there's a piece of work to do there. And in terms of the equalities team that we're starting to build up now, that's something that we're trying to address. I personally did a webinar very recently, and it was all about why people do put not specified or did not want to declare, as opposed to putting their ethnicity. And it is just simply a confidence thing in an organisation. So yes, we do need to work on that in that basis, but this is not a City of York issue. This is a wide issue. So we need to break those barriers down to make sure that we can get that. So I would say that yes, these are our figures. And they have made pretty static, to be honest. And we have done a lot of encouragement. And I know Ian's team have also done that in terms of making sure that iTrent is up to date, encouraging people to do it. But we cannot make it mandatory because that's outside of our scope to be able to do. So, but it's building that confidence up, and we have got a plan around that. So.
Yeah, I can appreciate the challenges, but I assume there must be best practice somewhere out there where authorities are more successful at fully replicating, and reporting. I don't know whether you've come across any.
I've come across a police force that did that, but they did an awful lot of positive recruitment on the back of it, and it was they did it specifically for police officers. And I won't say that they made sure that people completed it and they engaged with them. So that is one way of doing that. Resource intensive, very resource intensive. They set up a whole programme team. So that is an area of best practice. We don't have those resources in the council, but we can look at how we can do that. So yes, there is some good practice out there, but it is quite resource intensive, and it's a bit of a cultural piece as well to make sure that, there is a trust about what are we going to do with that information. And obviously we do monitor in terms of, we don't monitor everything in terms of ethnicity, etc. So it's them understanding that we're not going to use that information for other purposes. So yes, we do need to do that. But yeah, always on the lookout for different best practice.
Ian?
Just a couple of very quick things to add there. So obviously to change your workforce profile takes a while, doesn't it? Especially with how many staff that we've got. So you can see actually within the council that we still have changed the workforce for ethnicity and disability by 2 or 3%, okay, especially for disability. So that's a positive side. I was just going to just make out that we have 2 other documents that we make once a year. So there's an annual equalities profile, and then we'd also do a profile of our starters and leavers into the authority for protected characteristics. We published that in around about May time, and that's maybe a document that could come here somewhere down the line for a little bit of a discussion about, because I think that would give us a better insight actually into how our workforce is changing. Because if you just look at the high level figures that count 2,500 people, it's difficult to see the differences.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure the committee would be happy to look at that in the future work plan when Helen puts that together. Can't see any other questions. So we've obviously got the recommendations on page 12. Are we happy with those? So I'm seeing nods all around. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to agenda item 7, quarterly retention payments update, and back to Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we only bring this report when there is actually retentions. So we have 2 retentions to retention areas to actually update you on. There was one in December that was then paid in January, and then there was another one that was done just into January, but it didn't take effect until March, which is hence why they haven't actually gone through and they weren't reported at the last SMUC. So you've got the details there of the number of post holders that it actually impacted on, and the payments for those have now started and gone through as well.
Thank you very much. Just for my own benefit, just in terms of background, explain retention payment, because it's not at the start of the paper, and then just to check the figures, my understanding of the chart on 5, where it says payment to this group was approved in December 22 for one-off payment. Is that just those listed as grade 8, or is that all of those at grade 8, 7, 6 and 4? And because it's such a big bulk at grade 4, just whether you could explain any, you appreciate with, with what you can or can't say, but to identify that group and why it's such a big group.
Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So a retention payment is where we have a potential issue, either with retention of a group of staff, which is what the grade 9 38 post holders is. We've seen the vacant posts in a number of areas, and we've failed to recruit on a number of times. So we've actually put a retention because we've got a market issue as well. So a retention payment is being paid for the grade 9. So that's the first line where there's 38 post holders. That's been implemented there. The second line, which was for a December, so this was a one-off payment, and this was to a group of officers within a service, hence why there's different grades for different officers there. And then you can see the breakdown there that you've got for the number of post holders in each grade. So this was to work over a Christmas period, but there was a retention to ensure that we could actually deliver a particular service to go forward. Does that answer your question, Chair?
Yeah, so that would, the one-off retention payment applies equally to all of those in that group. And that is simply reflecting that there are 52 people in those grade 4 posts that received it at the time. Councillor Douglas.
Do you find that retention payments are important in certain directors, certain directorates above others at the moment? Can you give us any information around where they're most important?
We've actually now only got we only had these 2, so we've only actually got this grade 9 retention payment in place. We had a formal one, which you may recall came a couple of months ago. Yes, it has worked for some, but it hasn't been the only solution, to be honest. It varies with grades. I couldn't say that it works for all grades. it's a tool as well as other aspects that we can do. They are considered numerous times by lots of different people, but we find with the retention payment, you must also consider potentially a market supplement if we're not paying the right rate. So it's one of an element, and I wouldn't say you use it as a blanket approach. So, but we only have this one now in the council.
Thank you very much. Can't see any others, so presumably this is there for us to note, yeah, as set out on page 23. Are we happy to note that report? Thank you very much. Which then moves us on, as agreed at the start of the meeting, to agenda item 8, and therefore we'll drop into private session. So thank you to anybody who